Now, first this evening, a brand new book has been released. It's called Philip Lynott's Renegade of Thin Lizzy. Alan Byrne, the author, joins me on the line this evening. Alan, good evening.
How are you doing, Paul? How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to Radio Nova's Rock Reports and a brand new book about Philo. We're looking forward to this one very much. First of all, Renegade of Thin Lizzy. Is that telling us something about what the book is going to be about?
I suppose it does. It's heavily concentrated really on Phil's career outside of Lizzy. It's got that feel to it. So even though we had to bring Lizzy into the story in order to kind of propel what the main story was, that's kind of where it came about, in all honesty.
It's one of a trilogy of books connected to Phil and to Thin Lizzy. This is the second book in the three.
It is. The first book was out about 7 or 8 years ago. That was mainly just a Thin Lizzy biography. This one, we couldn't start it really in the middle of Phil's career, mainly due to the fact that, we needed to tell how he got to a certain point and how he got to a successful point, and that then led to other opportunities. But yeah, there is a third one planned, but that's something for next year.
So the book, obviously, as you say, it does involve his music, but it's looking at kind of the multifaceted side of Philip Lynott. It's looking at the person, the man, and the various different sides of him that we may or may not know of. Yeah,
there is quite a lot outside of the music, but I think a lot of that too is propelled by the effect of maybe his slip in terms of success in the industry, and how that, how he let that affect his personal life. That's where a lot of that kind of material comes from. And there's a good few anecdotes and stories told by guys that, were extremely close to Phil and, shall we say, ex-housemates for 5 or 6 years, a guy called Tex Reed. And just people who were very close to him outside of Thin Lizzy, and they just helped to paint, I think, a bigger picture than was painted with the previous book, certainly.
Obviously, and it's mentioned in the book just about the struggle then which he faced with being in the spotlight from time to time. That has gone into in quite a bit of detail.
Yeah, even though, shall we say, there was a fall from grace around the late 1980, early 81 period, there were still snatches of some really, really good material. And that followed through right until the end of the Thin Lizzy period, that is. And it's just that you couldn't really be as productive as he was for longer than what he actually was during that, particularly that. It was a very fruitful period between 1975 and 1980, and that kind of thing can't be, you just can't sustain that. So even though the productivity levels kind of dipped, there was still some superb material that came out, like Old Town, and I think the whole video, and everything associated with the making of it is gone into in fairly decent detail, I think, in the book.
You've been researching and writing about Thin Lizzy and Phil Lynott since back in the 1990s. But obviously, it's something of huge interest to you. But did you learn, or what elements did you learn about him personally that you mightn't have been aware of before by writing this particular book?
Well, with this particular book, definitely around the time of, shall we say, about 1975 again, 76, just prior to the Jailbreak album hitting. I don't think people were very much so aware. I certainly wasn't, because at that point Lizzy were 5 albums into their career. But they were very nearly dropped by their record label. Like if Jailbreak hadn't been a hit later on that year, it's quite possible we would have certainly had a very different Thin Lizzy or Phil Lynott story to tell. But for the most part, I think the things that I'm after learning is the sense of what he meant to the people I spoke with, be it family members or colleagues, and they still try and second guess what he may have been doing. And it's a fairly powerful impression to have left on people, to still have that impact. But that's what he wanted to do, and he certainly left it on me.
Do you hope, I suppose, for a similar reaction from those fans? Because there have been, you know, many books, many articles, so much discussion about this man, this iconic figure in Irish music. What do you hope that readers will get from it?
I think, well, most importantly, that first and foremost, it's the music that needs to be examined.
Yeah.
The music really is reflective of what we're talking about him for. You know, when you consider how productive Thin Lizzy were as a band, and outside of the band, how productive he was, within a space of about 12 or 13 years, it's an incredible amount of work that went in. And essentially, I think he overworked himself into an early grave.
Mm. One other very interesting point that I did see on this was about how boredom influenced the intro and Whiskey in the Jar. What's that story about?
Say that again to me.
Boredom in the studio, kind of during a particular recording session, led to a bit of a moment of magic with the guitar intro.
Yeah, that had to do with Eric Bell. That was at a rehearsal actually for one of the Decca albums. It would have been probably the Vagabonds album itself, but they were actually just upstairs rehearsing in a pub, absolutely bored senseless, because you know, they were waiting to go into a recording studio to do the album, but they just started playing around old Irish traditional songs. Mm-hmm. And out of nothing, Phil started strumming. He just started playing rhythm, and Eric kind of clicked onto it, and then they found themselves playing Whiskey in the Jar. And then I think Ted Carroll arrived in and just said, "Lads, I think you've got a hit with that." And of course they're falling around the place laughing because, you know, that's the last thing they wanted. And it took a number of years for them to actually kind of remove that. I think there was a bit of a stigma associated with that being a hit for them. So it did take quite a lot of time to kind of wash that away. But eventually they did.
Very interesting stuff, and a great read as well. Alan Byrne, author of Philip Lynott, Renegade of Thin Lizzy. Listen, many thanks for joining us on the Rock Report today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.